Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I hope you guys are doing well. Thank you guys so much for joining the course. This is something I've been thinking about doing for a long time, but obviously the situation, I haven't done any concerts. I usually do lots of concerts, but haven't done any concerts since February. So give me a little extra time to kind of pull some of these ideas that I've been thinking about doing for a long time. So thank you guys for signing up. I hope this is the first of many to come. I love doing this. I love teaching piano. I love playing piano. Basically, anything to do with the piano. I'm a junkie, a piano junkie. So today this is a 3-week course. So obviously, in 3 weeks, I can't show you every single thing there is to know about jazz, but I'm hoping to kind of get you on the right path, get you on the road, having fun with it, because I think that's the key is to have fun. We're going to work a lot on improvising, on some concepts. Some of this might be easy for you. Some of it might be hard. I guess I'm sure we'll have a lot of different levels here. But I'm going to try to present it in a way that even beginners or intermediate or even advanced can find useful information in it. So don't worry if some things might be a little too hard for you. Don't worry about that, and just do the best you can. The cool thing is you can rewatch these videos, so if there's parts you missed, you can go back and watch it as many times as you want. And the other thing, too, is I find that, not only with jazz, but especially with jazz, the best way to learn jazz is to play it, is to actually do it, not just listen to me talk about it. And, of course, I can hopefully share some insight and give you some good ideas, some tips, but the idea of this is that we're going to play together. We're going to practice together. We're going to have fun playing. I'm going to give you guys a lot of different things to work on, show you different ways to improvise. We're going to do some listening and copying. I play something, you copy. And at the end, I'm going to try to work on, for each week, we're going to do an arrangement. Today's going to be Amazing Grace. So I'm going to show you how I approach arranging that. And, of course, I'll try to do questions. I'm going to try not to do too many questions during the middle of the course, because I think it'll be easy to really get off track, and I don't want to confuse everybody. So I'm going to save to the end like really general questions. If you can save, like, you can ask me whatever you want at the end in the general question section. I want to make some time, and even if we go over the 2 hours, I'm okay with that. Even though it is pretty late over here, so I know it's good morning, good afternoon, and good night, because this is we got a worldwide audience. I'm here in Tokyo. It's 11 p.m. I know we got a lot of people in America, so it's morning over there, and some people in Europe, so it'll be afternoon over there, and evening here in Asia. So I thought about the time, and actually I've never taught a lesson this late before in my life. Usually I'm done by 7 p.m., maybe 8 p.m. at the latest, but I'm going to be going till 1 a.m. teaching some piano lessons, so that's cool. There is somebody asked if there's a PDF. Are we supposed to have sheets? The audio files didn't see. There is a file in the packet. There was a zip file, and the PDF file is part of the zip packet. There's MP3 files, and there's one big PDF file that has all the files for the whole 3 weeks in the course. It says like jazzonlinecamp.pdf. So that is the PDF file for you guys. So please check it out. Hopefully, and print it out. I'm going to put the files up on here on the computer right now. So if you don't have time to print it out, it might be a little bit small, but you can probably follow along. So I'll have these files as we go. All right. So, all right, let's get started. I want to first, I know this, each course, the first one I'm going to talk a little bit because I want to kind of explain what's going on, how I approach jazz. And then we'll get into playing, okay? So we're going to get to that in a minute. But so how do you approach jazz? Well, it's a lot different than I grew up playing classical piano. I started playing classical when I was a kid, 4 years old, and I started to play jazz when I got into high school. And up till then, I had never improvised or anything. So I just learned songs. I played songs. I practiced some scales. I did a little technique. But I just memorize songs. And I think that's how most people learn music. But when you get into jazz, it's not just about learning songs. It's learning a language. I've studied Japanese. I've been studying Japanese for a long time. But there's so many parallels between learning a language and trying to learn jazz, because you can't just learn the song. You have to be able to improvise with it. Every song that you learn is part of the language. You're going to learn chords, you're going to learn scales, you're going to learn phrases, you're going to learn all kinds of information that you can get out of one song. So if you really digest the information that's in each song, like for instance, we're going to work on an F blues, F 12-bar blues today, right? You can find so much information from that one song if you practice it. You can really milk a lot of things out of it. So I think that's how you want to approach it, is that you're learning a language. You have to be able to use all the skills. You have to use your ears. You have to be able to improvise. You have to have vocabulary. And vocabulary means a lot of things. There's harmonic vocabulary, ability to play chords. There's scale vocabulary, knowing what scales to play. There's melodic vocabulary. There's rhythmic vocabulary. There's so many different types of vocabulary. And then also the really important thing that you always want to keep in mind is that you're working on your rhythm as you're practicing, that you're not just playing and not thinking about the rhythm. You should always be focused on the rhythm. So that might mean playing along with the metronome, playing along with the iReal Pro application, whatever it is, maybe transcribing, playing along with the CD, but always like working on building your rhythm. That was a hard thing for me to get into when I started to play jazz, because I had started with classical, and classical isn't so much about strict time and keeping a groove and things like that. It's a kind of a different thing. So yeah. All right. So that's the basics introduction, if you will. So first things first, I'm going to play the song. You're welcome to play along with me if you want, but this is intended for me just to get us warmed up, play this song, and then we'll talk about how to practice it, how to approach learning a new song. So everything that we do with this song is basically how I would approach any new song, whether it be a jazz standard or blues or whatever, but I'll take the same approach and do this with each song. So I want to give you guys an approach to practice with, not just how to play this one song, but how to practice and play any song for that matter. All right, so let's get into it. Here we go. F Blues Etude. All right, so anyway, that was a little warm up here to get started on this. So we're going to dive into this. I'm going to show you how I would practice this. And you know what? The reason I started with this song, I've been teaching jazz, mostly privately, for a long time. And in fact, when I took my first jazz piano lesson, I believe I was 14 years old, freshman in high school. I went to actually it was just the band director who taught me this. But the first thing he showed me was a blues scale and taught me about the 12-bar blues. And I was hooked. I was like, whoa, this is just fun. Like, I had been practicing classical up until then, but getting a chance to improvise and that lesson was like really memorable to me. I can still picture going in there for the first time and how excited I was to like improvise and play. So I think it's just a great way to start because blues, the essence of jazz comes from blues. And this form, the 12-bar blues form, is the most common form in all of jazz. There's so many different melodies written over these same changes. So if you can learn the blues, it's a really, really good place to start. And plus, it's easy because you can just use a single scale and improvise over the whole song, the F blues scale. There's other ways you can improvise, but this is the easy way, the first step, if you will. I'll show you a little bit later. I'll show you another approach to do it, but we'll start off with this. So here, I'm going to pull up the F blues etude practice over here. All right, so first off, you're going to learn a scale. Most of you, I'm sure, have practiced scales before. Yeah, you do want to play the scale as is, like learn the fingering just like you would a regular old C major scale. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. But blues scale, it doesn't have 7 notes, it has 6 notes. So they lie a little bit funny with the fingering. It's different than a typical major or minor scale that you might be used to, right? So with the right hand, you do this fingering. 1. Let's try it together nice and slow. We'll do it in a swing rhythm, okay? So I want you to play along with me with the right hand. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, let's try it one more time. Ready? Cool. All right, why don't you try it with the left hand? Here we go. 1, 2, ready, play. One more time. Ready. Well, you can try with both hands this time. How about we try it together? 1, 2, ready, play. Okay, so, of course, you want to, like we just did, you want to play the blues scale as is, be able to play it up and down, learn the fingering, so when you're moving up and down the scale. Now, the next thing we're going to do, and this is something I do with all my students, including kids, including adults, any level, is we're always doing listen and copy. All right, so I find that I learned jazz a lot by imitating my favorite pianists, imitating people that I played with. I find that you get better by playing with people that are better than you. And so hopefully I'm better than you, and so that you can learn some things from me. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to play something, and I want you to copy it using the blues scale, right? Now, I want you to, of course, I want you to listen to the notes and the rhythm, but I also want you to try to listen more to it and listen to how I articulate the notes. How do I play them staccato? Do I play them legato? Do I play them, listen really carefully to how I play those notes. And a lot of times I'll play, if I'm playing a string of quarter notes, I'll play them not legato, but I'll play them almost like a mezzo staccato. So if I'm playing like, I'll tend to play quarter note phrases in this sort of detached but not staccato way. So if I'm playing, so that's more of a mezzo staccato as opposed to a regular staccato like, or. So I want you to really, basically the point is listen really carefully to everything about what I'm playing, not just the notes of the rhythm, but the articulation, the phrasing, the accents. Okay, all of that is part of the language. And that's what I want you, like in the future, when you do transcriptions or you're listening to other people, try to listen deeper. Listen to the phrasing, the articulation, the notes, the accents, like everything about what's going on with the music, the details, okay? Okay, so here we go. We'll start with easy phrases, and I'll eventually work them up and get more difficult, okay? And I'm going to play a little rhythm with my left hand as we do this. So this is how it goes. I'll play one measure, and then I want you to copy that one measure, okay? We'll start really simple. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, go. That was a hard one. Okay, let's try this time. Let's do 2 measure phrases this time instead of 1 measure phrases, okay? I got 2, you got 2, okay? Let's give it a try. 1, 2, here I go. All right, really hard one. Okay, if you could do that, you're killing. I have one crazy kid student that I can, no matter what I do, he can nail it. He's this little genius kid I teach, but he would be able to nail that one. I couldn't even do that probably one day, but all right, good. So if you notice that I started to switch the rhythm of it. Instead of starting on beat 1 all the time, I was sometimes starting on the end of 1, starting on 2. So I want to stress. I mean, I've already stressed it a little bit, but is building up a rhythmical vocabulary. Okay, so if we got this scale, it's got 6 notes. You know, there's a lot of ways we can work those notes, but if we don't mix up the rhythm, if we don't find variation in the rhythm, we're gonna get stuck. You know, so not only melodically you want to have variation, you want to have a lot of rhythmical variation in your improvising, right? That's going to make it interesting. Okay, so we're going to do some more of this, but first I'm going to go, I put out some licks in here, call them Jacob's Blues licks. Just, you know, some kind of general blues licks, things that I like to play. But let's go through them a little bit and play them. So here is number 1. So you can see that. Okay, number 1. You ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice we got those accents on the last one, okay? Let's give it one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so if you notice, I got this little grace note here. All right, now that's this kind of thing, you know. It's imitating basically like a guitar would go, like wow, wow, wow. All right, it's a really bluesy sound that you can do very easily on a guitar. But on a piano, you can't make this bending sound, but you can sort of imitate it by doing this very short grace note, something like that. You could do it on, you know, any note, but this particular note is cool. So these kind of phrases are going to make it sound really, really bluesy. All right, so number 2, a very similar concept here with that bluesy phrase. So let's try number 2 here. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, let's move on to 3. We'll just go through all these and play them. Okay. Okay, number 3. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. One more time. Number 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, number 4. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. One more time. Number 4. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, number 5. This one also has a grace note there. All right, let's give this one a try. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, how about number 6? Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, you see this little thing here? Maybe you probably know what that is. It's called a tremolo. Tremolo, you just kind of play the note. So this makes it, you could do very easy blues licks like this. You can do this with a lot of jazz, like this kind of tremolo octave thing. So all right, let's try number 6 one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, that's kind of a tricky rhythm there. All right, so let's move on. Next one we got, okay. These are patterns called Jacob's Blues patterns. So, I imagine that a lot of you are probably similar background to me. You started off playing classical. Maybe, you want to, dabble in jazz, or you've played jazz, I don't know. But maybe you've played Hannon or Czerny, these kind of exercise, these pattern things, right? All right, so I played some of that when I was a kid, these patterns. But in jazz, practicing these patterns, learning a lot of different patterns through the scales, is a really, really good way to practice. Like for the scales, like it's one thing to just kind of go up and down, but that gets a little bit boring. You can only take up and down the scale so many times before you're like, I've heard that before. I've heard that a few times. So you got to come up with other ways to make the scale sound interesting. So one way to do that is to create patterns, and these are a really good way to practice it, to give yourself different ways to move throughout the scale. So here, let's try a couple of these patterns that I wrote. They're pretty basic patterns. Basically, you just take this and you take that same pattern and you move it up the scale using this triplet rhythm. So all right, let's play through each of these a couple times. All right, you ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. One more time. Ready? And. All right, so we'll go through each of these patterns, and then I'll talk about how you can actually use them in a cool way. All right, so let's take a look here at number 2. This one's a 4-note pattern. It's going. All right, let's give it a try. 1, 2, 3, 4. One more time. All right, let's take a look at the third pattern. This third pattern is just a 2-note pattern, but I changed the rhythm of it, so it's like every dotted quarter note it's happening. So it creates this kind of this pretty cool rhythmical tension. So like I talked about before, like creating a lot of my music, a lot of my arrangements, I think what makes them sound cool and what makes them sound interesting is that there's a lot of interesting rhythmical variety happening here. So this is one thing that I like to do, is to take like a rhythmical ostinato. Ostinato is like a repeating pattern, right? So a repeating phrase that's, this time it's a dotted quarter note. So you got 3 eighth notes basically, ba 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 ba. So it'll create this unusual rhythmic tension. So anyway, let's give this one a try. Let's see if you can do it. 1, 2, 3, 4. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. So these are just a few patterns. You can create your own patterns. You can come up with all kinds of different cool and fun patterns to play. So when I actually use them in music, you don't want to make it sound like a pattern. You want to take if you're a really good improviser, you use patterns and you'll kind of distort them, or change the rhythm up a little bit, or maybe start a phrase with a pattern and then go into something else melodic. But there's so many different ways that you can use them. But you practice the patterns to learn different things, but then you make music with it. Okay, so there's a difference between just practicing patterns and making music with the patterns. So that's you kind of always want to separate, like, okay, now I'm practicing these patterns. This isn't really practicing how I will actually improvise, but I'm just learning some different things under my fingers, and then take what you've learned and try to make music with it. So I think that's the key, is if it's a scale, if it's a pattern, if it's a whatever it might be, a chord or something, is to learn it like as is, but then experiment with it and try to make it musical. All right, so here I'm going to do some sort of pattern ideas here based on some of these patterns that I wrote, and show you how you can make it kind of sound cool and musical. All right, so you can kind of hear that I'm doing patterns, but I'm not playing them like patterns. I'm trying to use patterns to create music with it. Okay, so let's move on. We're gonna do some improvising here. We're gonna do some listen and copy, some improvising. And the first one is the improvising challenge number 1. Okay, so when I learn a new piece, this is kind of the same thing as if you were to learn like a sonata or a concerto. It's too much to try to do the whole thing all at one time. You're going to break it down into sections, learn it one line at a time, one page at a time, one section at a time, one movement at a time, if you will. You're going to break it down into sections. It's the same thing with jazz. You're putting a puzzle together, taking it one piece by piece. All right, now this particular song is short. There's only 12 measures, and so there's only 3 chords that we're improvising. But if you were to try to just improvise right off the bat and play the whole 12 measures, you might struggle with it. You might have a hard time like switching, going from one chord to the next, switching the harmony and stuff. So I like to break it down and just work on one chord at a time. Take the first chord and just practice that. Get used to that one. So here we're going to be doing the left hand as written, this pattern, this little blues pattern, right? And with our right hand, we're going to use the blues scale. All right, but first thing we're going to do is improvise with just one note. All right, so we're only going to use F. Okay? You can't use the other notes yet. All right? So you might think, okay, what in the world, what could I possibly do with one note? All right, well, there's been some great music written with one note. All right, you can do a lot of things with one note. So obviously, you can't really focus on creating like these typical melodies going up and down, but you can create all kinds of cool rhythms. So you can think in a very rhythmical way and get very creative with the rhythm. All right, so I'm going to give you just an example. I'm going to play a few measures, and then I'm going to want you to play with me, okay? So here's an idea. Okay, so I want you to try. If you can do the left hand and do it. That's the idea, is that you can do both. But if it's really hard, if it's really challenging, like if you're kind of a beginner and you just want to try the right hand, that's okay. All right, I don't want you to get all frustrated. I can't do it. If you're having a hard time, just do the right hand now. You can work on it later. Okay, so I'm just gonna say that now. I'm not gonna say it a bunch of times, but do what's easier for you. If it's really, really too hard, just go ahead and work on the right hand. Okay, so your turn. Only using F. Try to come up with a very creative and fun rhythm with your right hand, okay? I'll play with you on the left hand so we can keep a good groove going here. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now let's try something. I want to stick with this one note because I love to challenge myself by basically I think of it as like putting myself in a box. I put myself in all these different boxes, and it's enclosed and there's not a lot of space to move around. You're stuck. You got to figure out some weird way to contort yourself, like twist your arm and your leg and like try something to make your, to get out of that box, or to find something in that box that you couldn't, right? So you're putting some that's really how I've learned jazz, how I study jazz, is I create all these different little rules for myself, these different boxes. I can only use this note. I can only improvise with these notes. I can only do this thing. I can only improvise with this rhythm. I can only do this. So there's like all these different things that I'm kind of focusing my brain, because sometimes if you can do anything, then sometimes you get stuck. You're frozen. You're like, you go back to what you always know. You go back to those phrases that you always know. So in order to like break out of that and to like do something new, you have to like actually, instead of opening up, you have to close down and narrow the focus of what you are doing on it. And that's going to make you think in a different way. Okay, so that's what I want you to get out of this, is that you're thinking in ways that you haven't thought, to expand your brain. You're contracting in order to expand. All right. So let's do a trading here. Trading means like I play, you play, I play, you play, right? In jazz, we do that all the time. We do trading 4s, 8s, or in this case, we're going to do trading 2s. I'm going to play 2, and you're going to play 2, okay? We're going to try to get as creative as we can with one single note, okay? Here we go. 1, 2, my turn. Your turn. Okay. All right. So there's one note. Let's move on. Now, I would go just one note at a time. But for time's sake, I want to cover a lot of things. So you can go back and work on this on your own, adding one at a time. But let's add 2 notes this time. So the first 3 notes, you can improvise with these 3 notes: F, A flat, and B flat. Okay? And again, I want you to still think rhythmically, but you have more notes to work with melodically now too, so you can make some interesting melodies. Okay, so let's keep going with this trading thing, because I think like listening to me and playing hopefully will give you sort of some stimulation. You can copy me, but the idea is that you're gonna maybe try to do your own thing too. So you can copy me if you want, or you can try to maybe play something similar, like sort of like I hand off the ball to you and you play something similar but take it somewhere else. Like that would be even ideal, is if you could do something like that, or do something completely different. Just experiment and have fun. Okay, so there's not really any set rules with this, but let's give it a try. I'll do 2 measures, and then you gotta do 2 measures. Okay, here we go. Let's start with the rest. All right. So, okay, we're going to add the next note. Now, the next note, that is the cool note. That is the blue note that makes this scale bluesy. All right? You can hear it. It's like, up till there, it's like kind of sounds minor. Oh, now it's, really spicy. And so, knowing that as you're playing a scale, like knowing the notes in the scale and what each one sounds like, what each one has its own character, its own flavor, if you will. Knowing that is really important to being able to express melodies and create things. So let's try now the same idea but using 4 notes now. All right, let's continue with the 2 and 2. Okay, I got 2, you got 2. 1, 2, here we go. Let's also just so we're focusing on the rhythm here. Let's not start any phrases on beat 1. Everything should start with the rest. Okay, it's very easy to kind of get into a pattern where everything's starting on 1, and I want to try to break those patterns. So everything should start on a rest. It can start on the and of 1, 2, 3, whatever, but just don't start on 1. Okay. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, cool. So, all right, we're going to jump ahead a little bit. Let's use the entire scale now. Okay? And we'll do the same thing, 2 and 2. Now let's switch it up. Let's do 4 and 4 now. 4 measures for me and 4 measures for you. And I recommend that you, actually I should have said this earlier, but keep your left hand going when it's my turn too. So you're constantly keeping the left hand going. When it's my turn, you rest the right hand and listen, and then take your turn. Then play with both hands when it's your turn for the 4 measures. Okay? I'm going to start it off. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Cool. Okay. So here I want to show you one thing. Sorry about that. So there's a thing called a question and an answer. So basically, any kind of music, whether it's it doesn't matter the style of music, classical, jazz, rock, whatever. Music is basically consists of tension and release. Tension, release. If you have a basic chords, you have the 1, 5, 7, 1 progression, right? The 1 is your resolution, and the 5 is where you create the tension, and then you go back to the 1, and it resolves. So you have this tension and release. It's this constant back and forth, right? A give and take. Now, I think you're familiar with this in the sense of harmony, probably. Maybe you've heard about this. Again, basic concept of music, but you can do the same thing with melodies. All right, so there's a thing called a question and an answer. All right, so we're doing this scale. It's the F blues scale. So the first note or the tonic of the scale is F, right? So if I'm playing a phrase and I resolve the phrase on an F, then that's an answer. That's like a resolution. That resolves. But if I end the phrase on another note that's not an F, then I'm creating tension. It didn't resolve on the one. So that's considered a question. So this is a concept that I teach to all my kids, not all my kids, but I mean all my students. Some are kids and some are adults, but this idea of question answer. And it's really, really, really a great thing to practice, because the idea is that you're creating this tension with a melody, and then you're resolving that tension by landing on the tonic. And there's so many things that you learn by doing this practice that I do with my students a lot. And the most important thing is that you're learning about phrasing. You're feeling a phrase end, and then you're feeling the phrase resolve. And if you do that naturally, you kind of go back and forth. And you start to feel, instead of counting measures, so a lot of students that I have when they're playing jazz, they look at a piece of music, even this one's 12 measures, but some songs maybe 32 measures or more, 40 measures, who knows. And you get lost. You get confused. It's hard if you're trying to count one at a time. When I first started learning jazz, I was trying to count one measure. Oh. And if you lose focus for 1 second, you're off the form, and it's frustrating. You get lost very easily, and it's hard to keep the form. But what musicians, trained musicians, people that really know what they're doing, they're not counting one measure at a time. They're feeling phrases. All right, they're feeling. Maybe it's 4 measure phrases or sometimes 8 measure phrases. They're feeling whole sections at a time. So they're feeling, and they don't have to count. Like when I play a song now, what it used to be really hard for me, like something like maybe like So What, where it's sitting on one chord for a really long time. When I first started playing that, I got lost so easily. I couldn't keep track of it. But as I started to feel things in phrases, 4-bar phrases, 8-bar phrases, then that became natural. Then I didn't have to count it anymore. Like I can just feel an A section. So basically, this thing that I'm going to show you here, this little question answer thing, it really helps you to feel 4-bar phrases or 8-bar phrases, where you can do it in different ways. But that's really, really, really important thing about being able to play jazz is feeling phrases, not counting measures. Okay, so this is how it works. I'm going to play a question, and so my question is going to end on any note other than F. And then you're going to play back an answer. Now, you can play the answer. There's 2 types of answers. There's one that's called a parallel answer. Okay, I'm going to give you an example here. This is a parallel answer. First I'm going to play a question, and then I'm going to play a parallel answer. Okay, you see the first part? Question. And then I play almost the same thing. I change it at the end and finish it with a fa, the melody now resolved. Okay, so that's one. That's kind of called a parallel answer. So I want you to try that first. I want to play a phrase, and it doesn't have to be exact, but something similar, and end it though on fa. Okay, let's give it a try. This is called parallel answer. 2 measures for me, and then 2 measures for you. All right, I'm sorry. I threw you a curveball there. It might be a little bit difficult there. Let's even take a quick look at some of these questions here. And sorry, you were watching the non-English version because I copied and pasted the wrong code. Thank you. Yeah. But if you don't speak Japanese, that might have been a bit of a struggle for you there. But I'm glad you got the right code now. Greg. Thanks, Greg. Hi, Stephanie. Thanks for checking in. And thanks, Mike. And don't get complaints from the neighbors. Yeah, well, I think I'm good. I soundproof this room. This is my studio here in Tokyo, and it's completely boxed and soundproofed in, so we should be good. I've never had a complaint before, so should be good on that end. And Annabeth. Oh, Andrew, thanks for the message, man. Annabeth, do you do Q&A yourself or just with the group? I do it all the time. I do it with private lessons. I do it with group lessons. It's something I teach to everyone, including kids from like as young as 4 years old. I teach them this concept, and they get it. And if I stick with it, I've noticed I've been doing it for years with some kids. They just improvise like amazingly by just off this concept that I just keep drilling. We learn a new scale, we do question answer. We learn a new scale, we do question answer. And then there's a lot of variations you can do with question answer. Right now we're doing a simple 2-bar, but you can do 4 bars. You can do different time signatures. You can do all kinds of different stuff, and then combine it with chords and make up melodies and stuff. Okay, so I'm going to show you. Again, I'll check in a little bit here and there, but I don't want to get too far off course, okay, so we can kind of stay on focus. But at the end, I'm going to do a general question answer, and you can ask me anything you want, and I'll try my best, even if I stay up till 2 in the morning. I'm okay. I don't mind staying up. So anyway, we talked about the parallel answer. Now, there's another type of answer called the contrasting answer. The words don't really matter, but basically an answer that has nothing to do with the question. It's something completely different. So, for instance, if I play, completely different, right? Nothing related to it at all. All right, now I just want to go off course here for just a second so that you can see this concept in a lot of different music, all right? So a very famous song that, there's a lot of songs that use a parallel question and a parallel answer, like a lot of simple melodies. For instance, Beethoven, Ode to Joy. There's a question. In a key of C, right? So it would end. This one ends on D. And then the answer is almost exactly the same, a parallel answer. And there it resolves, right? There's an example of a question answer. Another one would be, what's the name of it? London Bridge. Here's the answer. Right? It starts the same, but it finishes a little bit different. So that's still considered a parallel answer. Now, here's an example of a contrasting answer. Let's see here. Okay. Yeah, that's the Mozart Rondo alla Turca, right? So that's the second part of it. There's the question, and here's a completely different answer. Resolving there. All right, so there's a good example of a contrasting answer. But if you listen to music, and a lot of times it's not always question, answer, question, answer. It could go question, 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 and answer, or maybe never have an answer, or answer, 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 answer. There's a lot of different ways, but there's question, answer, back and forth. So now let's try what we talked about, doing the contrasting answer. I play a question, and you play something completely different, and still resolve it on F. Okay, let's give it a try. All right, so this time let's do it where you do both. You come up with a question, you come up with an answer. You can do either one, parallel, contrasting. It's up to you. 2 measures of a question, 2 measures of an answer, okay? And see see if you can do that. If you do that, you get into that. That's gonna make feeling 4 measures really, really easy. You're just gonna feel the melody naturally. Phrases ending. It's easy to feel 2 measures. I think is the easiest one to get into, and then we'll get into the next one would be 4 measures. But if we have a question answer, combine that becomes a 4 measure phrase. So anyway, give it a try. See if you can do it. I'll just accompany this time. 1, 2, ready, play. Let's trade this time. I'll play the question answer. You play question answer. So I hope you guys get the concept. I think it's a pretty easy concept, but it's something that you can stick with it. And when you're improvising, learning a new scale, learning an old scale, whatever, but learning something new, try this concept out. All right. Now, in jazz, it doesn't mean that you have to play like this. Okay? It's not like jazz musicians are constantly playing 2-measure question, 2-measure answer. We don't. But the concept of getting into it and feeling phrases. All right, so it's one thing to improvise and just play, like a lot of notes and kind of. Let me just show you like a bad example of improvising with just kind of playing a lot of random notes. Now, okay, it was flashy and fast, but it was terrible music, like in my opinion, because there was no phrasing. It's just kind of like, I'm just playing notes, playing scale, playing notes, playing notes. There's no real clear, concise melody that's kind of starting and stopping, right? So it's really important that you have these phrases, these starts and stops, and just like music, any great piece of music that you listen to has phrases that start, they stop, just like talking. If I just run on sentences forever, it's gonna sound really. You're gonna get tired of it. Basically, I think after one chorus of that, I'm already tired. I'm like, I can't take it anymore. All right, so here's a better example of using phrases, rest, and questions, answers, if you will. Here's an example of that. Now you can kind of you can latch onto it. You can grab onto it and kind of, what's going to come next? What's the next phrase going to happen? You got these pauses, you got these starts, you got these stops. You're feeling the phrasing, right? So that's a really, really key part of playing jazz. Any song, really, for that matter. Okay. Let me just do a quick check-in on some of these questions here. Book that I would recommend that covers all of the blues and jazz scales with exercises that you feel one of the best. Off the top of my head, let me think about that one. Hopefully, I'll try to come back to it. Right off the top of my head, I can't think of a good example of that. Hi from Des Moines, Iowa. Hello. Thanks, TJ McCann. Thanks for checking in, man. And Inge Falk. Love the examples of what you consider musically poor. I'm actually starting to understand. Thank you. All right, good. So I find that actually when I teach, especially when I teach kids, like giving them bad examples is the easiest way to understand what is supposed to do. So knowing what you're not supposed to do, I think sometimes is a really good thing. It makes it easier to understand what you are supposed to do when you know what you're not supposed to do. All right, let's move on. Yeah, there's a Blues Hannon. That's a good one. The Blues Hannon. That's a good book. Good call, Robert. All right, so we did this with F7. Now we can do the same thing here with B flat 7. We'll just do a touch of it. You could do the same approach where you start with one note, adding notes. Okay, I like that approach whenever you're learning a new scale, or especially if you're trying to do something with two hands. All right, something about playing solo piano. Solo piano is a really, really hard thing to do. It's not like saxophone or trumpet for that matter, because saxophone, trumpet, they're playing just a melody. Of course, I mean, physically it's hard to play the saxophone. I'm not saying that's easy, but you only have to play one note at a time. You can just play the melody. But piano, we got to play chords. And if we want to play solo piano, we got to play chords, we got to play melody, we got to play bass line, all this stuff happening all at one time. It's really hard to just do it, like to dive into it. Right? It takes some real training, it takes some real practice to be able to have like independence between your hands, especially what I like to say, rhythmical independence. So you have your left hand playing cool bass line, and then you have your right hand being able to improvise over top of that while keeping that left hand going, okay? Now that's hard. It takes some real practice to do that. So these exercises are designed to help you with that concept of having independence, rhythmical independence. All right, so let's do just a little bit of improvising over the B flat 7. Let's do trading twos. I'll play 2, you play 2, and we'll improvise over it. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's do the same thing now with C7. So we go through each chord. Now notice that the scale is not changing. The scale is just one scale, the F blues scale, over all the chords. All right, so that's why the blues is simple, because you can use that one scale. There's not a lot of songs where you can just use one scale and improvise with. That's why I started with this one. It's easy. Well, in that sense, but being able to play it really good, that's a different story. But just being able to kind of dive into it, it's not so difficult to play one scale and play over it. So let's try now with C7. And why don't we try this? So we're mixing it up. Let's try a listen and copy this time. I'll play 2 measures, and I want you to try to copy it exactly the same. Okay? All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so you might notice that with this scale, and with this chord especially, it does create, there's a lot of like tension that's being created here, especially between this La natural, and then you got this. You got some kind of real like tension that you would normally say, oh no, you can't do that. You can't have that kind of tension. No, but yeah, you can with the blues. Okay, now the reason why this works is because you're only doing the C7 for one measure. And when we do it one chord like this, it doesn't sound that great because it's just that single chord. It sounds like that's now become the one chord. But when we do it in the context of the song, and we go to that 5 chord, and we still stay on that blues scale, totally works fine. There's no problem with it at all. When in any of those notes that clash, then they're going to clash, but they're going to clash very quickly. They're not going to sit on those notes. The left hand's moving quickly, and it's in a low range. So that dissonance that's being created there is not an issue at all. You can get away with it, no problem. You wouldn't want to play a blues scale, different blues scale for each chord. That would actually sound kind of weird. Like if I played on B flat, I went to the B flat blues scale, and then C for the C blues scale. It would sound kind of funny, like this. Let me see. Well, it doesn't sound that bad, but it does sound a little bit funny. It kind of sounds like you changed the key, right? So the reason this works is you're in one key, and you have that one scale, and you can just blow on it for a long time. And that doesn't work with, this is not just for blues, right? So if you're playing a regular standard tune, and you have like an F7, you can get away with playing a blues scale over that. You can use blues scale in all kinds of different settings, but especially with blues for that matter. All right, so let's go here to this improvising challenge number 2. All right, improvise challenge number 2. Okay, so this is something that I do with a lot of songs. I'll zoom it in here so you can see. All right, so it's a lot easier to improvise with one hand, right? Being able to play the accompaniment with your left hand, improvising with your right. As I said earlier, it's very difficult. So you got to come up with a lot of different ways to practice it. So one thing to do is, that I like to do is continuous rhythm. It's just purely a rhythmical exercise. Almost like a drummer would practice. You're trying to like get used to just feeling the rhythms. So basically your left hand is playing this groove with your left hand, and then your right hand is playing continuous whole notes. All right, now whole notes is probably really easy. All right, so basically what I mean is that you're just can keep playing whole notes. You can change the notes within the scale, for instance, like this. Okay, so then we go with the half notes and quarter notes. Just keep going. It's purely a practice, okay? This is something to help you with rhythmical independence. All right, so let's try this. I think you're probably okay with whole notes, but let's just do it. Let's do one chorus of whole notes, one chorus of half notes, one chorus of quarter notes, try eighth notes, we'll try triplets, we'll try 16 notes. All right, that might be really hard when we get to that. So anyway, let's start off with whole notes. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now let's try half notes. Quarter notes. No resting. All right, eighth notes. No triplet. Sixteenth. That's a lot of 16th notes. All right, so now again, let me re-stress this, that this is not how you actually improvise. Okay, this is an exercise, a challenge, a practice, a rhythmical challenge. One, to get you playing notes all over the piano, but to also be able to play different rhythms with your right hand versus what your left hand's doing. It's purely a rhythmical exercise. But I do this exercise. One of my jazz teachers taught me this, and I do it all the time. I love this exercise to learn, especially when there's scales that change. Like the song we're going to do next week, it has different scales for different chords. So in that case, this exercise is a fantastic way to get used to playing through the different changes and stuff like that. All right, so then the next step, okay, this is the hand independence, right? So actually, I know I'll talk about it more later, but basically, exactly. Thanks for the question, Mihai. The things that I'm showing you right now is a little bit simple, but the concept's exactly the same as of how I learned how to do hand independence. Basically, taking what I like to do is have like ostinato bass lines or some kind of groove happening in my left hand, and then be able to improvise freely with my right hand. So the things that I'm showing you right now, this is the stuff that I practiced. Okay, it might be on a little bit more difficult level, but the concept is exactly the same. So what I would do next is, after you've been able to kind of keep one particular rhythm going continuously, is to now create different rhythmical patterns. Okay, so this is assuming that you're trying to play, but you get stuck. Like your left hand gets stuck, or you play a rhythm and then your timing gets off. Okay, now that's what happens when you're not used to doing both hands together. You try to do something, you focus too much here on the right hand, and then your left hand gets off, your bass line gets off. Okay, so you have to like train yourself to be able to handle a bunch of different rhythms. So this is really about building rhythmical vocabulary and that hand independence. So for instance, we got this rhythm here. So what the idea is that you're going to play the left hand as written, and the right hand's going to play this rhythm. Now you can change the notes, but you have to play that rhythm on every measure. So anyway, let's try it. I'll play along with you, but you can change the notes. It doesn't have to be the same notes that I'm playing. Just worry about the rhythm. Okay, let's give it a try. This one right here. 1, 2, ready, play. Now let's move on to number 4. Let's read through a couple of these. Number 5, doing the same one. Do ba dee bop. There we go. I'll count it off. So let's try it together. 1, 2, ready, play. Number 6, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, let's try it. Let's skip ahead here to number 8. Now we start with the and, an eighth rest on beat 1. We got da ba doo ba da. Okay, a little bit more tricky. Let's try it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, good. Let's do number 9. This one's all triplet. So many of you probably know this, but swing rhythm is based off the triplet. Swing eighth notes are the first and the last note of a triplet, especially at the slower tempo. As it gets faster, they tend to even out more, but at this tempo, it's basically the first and the last note of a triplet. But the underlying subdivision of the rhythm is still this triplet. This is taka 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 taka. The subdivision is like the portion of the rhythm that's like always there in the background, even if it's not being played. You're feeling it. You're always constantly feeling this with swing rhythm, right? There's this triplet. So this next phrases have that triplet rhythm in there. Let's try it. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, and number 10. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. So anyway, this is just to get you an idea. This is how I practice not just the blues song, but like for instance, Pink Panther, where I have that like bass line, and I want to improvise here with the right hand. I do the exact same thing. I will start off by just trying to play quarter notes with my right hand. So let's say I have like even like a 5/4. I'm just gonna go off a little bit here to show you how you can apply this to other things. Let's say for instance like a 5/4. Ostinato bass line, right? I might do the similar thing where I'll play straight quarter notes over that. And then go to eighth notes. Then I will do again. I will pick a rhythm. I'll pick a rhythmical pattern to practice. Again, this is something I'm doing a 5/4 bass line here, so it's tricky with my rhythm. I mean, I've done this before, so I can do it. But for instance, maybe I'll pick a rhythm like this, bop bop, 5/4. It'd be let's see, okay. Hard one. Or maybe 7 here. So anyway, just going off on a tangent here, but this is exactly how I practice, and that's how I'm able to do things like that. Like left hand plays like this, my right hand plays like this. It's just learning one rhythm at a time. And I honestly, if you learn like, let's say like you learn 10 different patterns, but you learn them really well, and you could just you could nail those rhythms, 10 rhythms. You could make all kinds of great music. Like this particular song, I would say if you got like 10 of these rhythms down, you could make so many different cool rhythms with your with your right hand, while the left hand's keeping the bass line going. You'd have plenty of rhythmical vocabulary, like we talked about, rhythmical vocabulary to start with, and then you could take that and expand on it. And once you kind of learn one, it becomes easier to learn the next one. So anyway, I highly recommend that you approach learning songs like this, thinking about it in sort of a rhythmical fashion, right? So I've noticed that a lot of jazz students that I've taught in the past, especially those who've studied classical first, is that they have a hard time getting into the rhythm of it. They get the notes and they kind of get the theory, right? But it's really, really challenging to get the rhythm. So you really have to make it a point to really work on it, to work on your rhythm. So practice it. Practice this song, practice other songs in a similar fashion, right? Go ahead and write out your own rhythms. If these rhythms are too easy, come up with some more challenging rhythms. Get creative, try 2-measure patterns too. These are all 1-measure patterns, but you can do 2-measure patterns that you keep repeating, and just basically you're just kind of always expanding your brain and challenging yourself to things that you can't do, right? So the things that I can do really well, I don't really need to practice those. I need to expand. I need to go to the next level. So I need to find a new rhythm that I can challenge myself with. So that's really the key, is like always challenging your brain, whether it be rhythmically or melodically, or there's a lot of ways that you can challenge yourself, but like trying to push through to go to the next step. And that's how you're going to really, really grow and really, really improve. Okay. So now that we've kind of practiced the whole thing. Now, we've kind of worked on it. Now, why don't we play the entire song this time, where we'll play the whole way through. We'll play the melody. Then we'll improvise for a couple choruses here. How about like this? We'll play the melody as written, and I'll take one chorus, and then you take one chorus, and then we'll trade. I'll trade 4 bars. We'll do 2 bars. We'll finish up with 1 bar, and then we'll go back and play the melody one more time. So this would be like a real performance if you were to go to a jazz club and play this with a band or something, right? So this would be something similar to that. So here we go. Let's play it together, all right? I want you guys to dive in and give it your best shot. If you can only do your right hand, totally, that's fine. Don't have to do both hands. If you can do both hands, great. And push yourself. Go for it. All right, let's try it. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Fours. Twos. Ones. Melody. Coda. All right. Very, very, very nice. Let me check a couple check on the chat here real quick. So, John Johnson. Let me see. Let me check out a couple things here. I love Jacob's Pink Panther. It's amazing. Thanks, Stephanie. Jazz Inventions for Keyboard by Bill Cunliffe, and it is a good exercise book. Cool. I haven't heard that one. I'll have to check that out. Leanne Rosen, slower tempo might be easier to follow. All right, I'm sorry. Yeah, if it might be a little bit too fast for you, so go ahead and practice it with a metronome at a slower tempo if it's too fast for you later, and then maybe work your way up to this tempo, this higher, faster tempo later. John Johnson, it's interesting that although I've played classical piano for 10 years, I find this harder than playing something by Liszt. Yeah, at first, especially if you're not used to jazz, like doing this kind of thing as a whole, it's a whole different thing. It's a whole different way of approaching practicing and music. Did okay up until the 16th notes. Yeah. Yeah, 16th notes. That's kind of a that's like the limit for me. That's pretty hard. I was tired after one chorus of that. Started off so confident with the exercise and crumbled at the 8th notes. Yeah. You got to work your way up. So sometimes when you go from quarter to eighths, or it's a big transition there, so you might want to drop the tempo down a little bit. Maybe I should have done that for you guys. I'm sorry if I kept the tempo up there. Probably should have slowed it down a little bit. You're right. Thank you so much, Alias. Amazing. Thanks, AJ. And it takes remarkable concentration. Remarkable that you can do that for so long. Yeah, it is. It's really like it takes real concentration to do this. And I think like learning jazz and like, well, music for that matter, but being able to focus on something and like challenge your brain in a way where you have to concentrate really hard. I think that's how you really grow musically. You just gotta really push yourself. But you gotta stick with it and stay consistent on it, not just do it one time and never do it again. Not a question, but after you said the fourth note in the blues scale makes it blues-like, I tried to use the note. I found that it really sounds more jazzy. Realized that I was not using that note at all. Yes, yeah, that note is really key, because without that note, it's just if without the that note, it's just a pentatonic scale, which is a cool scale, but it's a different scale. But you add that note to the pentatonic scale, now you have a blues scale. How important is transcription as a beginner jazz pianist? All right, so yeah, transcription, very important. Now, you don't have to transcribe like really complicated things at first. I would recommend to start with transcribing Miles Davis trumpet solos. That's kind of an easy way to start with something, and you can learn a lot of great things from that. Like for instance, Miles Davis, Kind of Blue. That's a great album. And trumpet's really easy to hear because of single note melodies, and especially Miles Davis, he doesn't play a lot of fast notes, but all the music's there, all the like articulations and the phrasing and the notes and the character of it is all there. You can learn so much from it, and it's not so hard to transcribe. So start with trumpet, especially Miles Davis. Even Chet Baker is kind of similar style to transcribe, so check that out. How important, I'm sorry, the next one. Thanks for the advice. Too fast for me, but now I know how to practice. Yeah, I know. Sometimes this might be, I know this might be a little fast for some of you, might be a little slow for some of you. Thank you. Your teaching techniques are incredible. Thanks, Stephanie. Cool. Well, I'm glad you guys are enjoying this. I'm going to show you one other, kind of run through this a little bit quick here, and then we're going to dive into Amazing Grace, and I'll arrange it. But before that, let me show you one other way that you can improvise over this song. Okay, so I showed you the easy way, just playing the one scale, right? But some of you probably know this, but some of you probably don't. So for each chord, F7, instead of playing the blues scale, you can play what's called a mixolydian scale. All right, now, in another course at another time, I will get into like what that all, Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian. Okay, there's these modes. You may know it, you may not. Don't worry about it. If you don't know it, it's okay. I'm just going to teach you one for now. It's called the mixolydian mode. Okay, mixolydian mode is basically, let's take, for example, C major scale. You have C major scale, right? All you have to do is lower the 7th note by a half step, but go down 1. And now you have a mixolydian scale, okay? So when you think, oh, mixolydian sounds really complicated, all you think, major scale, lower the 7th. There you go. All right, so for F mixolydian scale, you would have... For a B flat Mixolydian scale, you would have basically a B flat major scale with the flat 7 and C7. Now, if you go with this approach, the reason it's a little more difficult is because you have to use different scale for different chords. Each F Mixolydian, B flat Mixolydian, C Mixolydian. You need to know 3 different scales now instead of just 1. All right, so this is the next step. Okay, there's way more steps with blues. Like this is the bare bones, the simplest blues that there is. There's really, really complex blues. There's all kinds of variations you can do on it. It's like anything, like jazz. Like it started off really simple, and then everybody tried different things and came up with new stuff, and then you can come up with your own. Like I've come up with my own different chords to play over blues and stuff. But for instance, okay. All right, let's do just a little bit of listen copy with a Mixolydian. I'll play a 1 measure phrase and you copy it, okay? All right, here we go. 1, 2, here we go. Okay, so now if we improvise with this, I'm going to show you real quick. If I just improvise using just the notes of the Mixolydian scale, it can sound cool. Let me give you an example. All right, so it sounds different, right? It doesn't sound as bluesy. It sounds a little bit more majory. Majory. I'm not sure that's the word, but I think you know what I mean. It sounds a little majory. But what jazz musicians like to do, including myself, pretty much all of us, we like to use notes that aren't in the actual scale that we're playing. That sounds like a crazy idea, right? But that's how we make it sound more interesting instead of just playing. A little bit too vanilla for my taste, all right? So anytime we have a major type scale, like Mixolydian is basically a major scale with a flat 7, right? Or just a regular major scale, we can add extra notes to the scale. So for instance, on a major scale, the flat, I said that on a major scale you can add extra notes. That's not what I meant to say. You can add extra notes on any scale. But on a major scale, the flat 3rd sounds really cool to add it to the scale. So instead of just this, now I get this. Whoa. Now it's instead of a 7-note scale, now it's an 8-note scale. All right, we call that a bebop scale when we add extra tones that aren't in the scale. Now, if I use that tone, now that sounds bluesy, right? That sounds dissonant. If I use that note, now it's going to sound a little more interesting. Now, with all of the different Mixolydian scales, I can use the flat 3rd. So for B flat 7, you would have this one. F7, C7. So anyway, for F7, let's try this for a second. I'll play a phrase using that note, and you copy it. Okay, we'll do 1 measure phrases. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so there's just a little bit of I'm not going to go into it too much further today, but I just want to show you that this is a different way, like the next step of blues is, using the Mixolydian scales. Let me check in on some the chat. Thanks, Pam. Great teaching. Thank you so much. And just avoid solar. Teaching techniques are incredible. Thank you. Thank you very much for doing this. I've been waiting a long time. I'll practice jazz scale for sure. Yes. Great inspiration. I found that I've become stale and repetitive. Looking forward to diving into these exercises. Right on. Miles Davis, Omnibook, C Instruments, sheet music book, 200 plus pages. Yeah. You stopped on the 5th, and that chorus hurts my poor little classical heart. You're a great teacher. Understand both classical and jazz. The explanations make a lot of sense and easy to understand for me as a classical trained pianist. I am easily playing to vanilla. All right, so I'm hoping, if you can add, all right, no, I showed you on the major scale that you can add this extra flat third, okay? Remember, major scale, flat third. Now you think minor third, right? But now I'm not changing the third. I'm adding that extra note. So I'm keeping the major third, but throwing in the flat too, right? Now, that's just one note that you could add to a major scale or Mixolydian scale. You could also add the flat 5th to it, which would sound really cool. So, I could even add both notes and make it what would that be, a 9-note scale? Now it's like there's only a couple notes that I'm actually not playing, which would be these 3 notes, right? I'm playing all the notes except those. Now that Mixolydian scale is not sounding so vanilla anymore. Now it's got a lot of spice, a lot of different shapes to it. And, okay, you could add other notes. You could use even the flat 9 if you wanted to. All right, and the flat 9's got a bit of, a little bit, little spiciness to it. Well, you could add, the natural 7 too. All these notes work. Any of those notes will work in the scale, as long as you don't sit on them for a long time. So if I were to happen to sit on that sharp 7, or 7, that would be natural 7, right? It's gonna sound. That doesn't sound right. No, right? You don't want to sit on it. But if I use it as some kind of passing tone where I'm kind of navigating my little melody going through here, blah, 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 and I use it as a passing tone, then you don't even notice that, the dissonance that is created with that flat 7, right? All right, so right now I use every single note in the whole scale. I use all the notes, all 12 notes. But you didn't hear any funny clashes because I didn't stick on those notes. I didn't use them in ways that were going to clash. I kind of use them as passing tones, as ways to create phrases, right? So that's going to make your lines a whole lot more interesting. Are you releasing the sheet music for your version of Hey Jude? Thanks, man. I need to get on it. Okay, I'm sorry. I've had a lot of people ask me about that recently, and I want to work on it. Okay. I will release it. Hopefully I'll get it done soon. Okay. I'm sorry about that. Sorry, guys. I'm really sorry. Hi, Milton from Bronx, New York. Hey, what's up, man? What's up, Milton? Okay. So, all right. That's getting to that time. Where we're going to dive into Amazing Grace. All right. Let's see here. Okay. Now, let me pull this one up here. Give me just 1 second. I'm going to get a quick drink of water. I'll be back in 5 seconds. Hold on. Okay, I'm back. Okay, so for each of these 3 weeks, each of these courses, we had a song that we picked. Basically, I'm just using that as like as a jumping point to dive into some concepts, right? Try to show as many things as I can, and hopefully, I don't expect everything to stick. Some things might be redundant to you, but maybe if there's one or two things that you thought, oh, you know what, that one thing though that I learned a lot. Hopefully, that would be inspire you. That'd be great. So for this next one, I'm just going to talk about how I arrange, what I think of. Some of it might be a little bit difficult for you. Some of it might be a little easy. I don't know. But I'm just going to kind of show you what I do when I sit down and I'm going to pick a song. I'm going to arrange it. What do I think about? How do I come up with chords? How do I reharmonize things? Why do I reharmonize things? Just kind of try to give you some insight into what I think. And if you can use some of that, great. That'd be awesome. And if not, that's cool. You can come up with your own things. This is just my way of arranging. So that's how I learned. I copied some of my favorite pianists. Like my favorite pianist is Keith Jarrett, Bill Evans, Herbie Hancock. I listen and copy. So copy the people that you like and learn from them. Not everything they do I like, but I learned a lot. So anyway. Okay, so let's take this song, Amazing Grace. Let's say I'm going to arrange this song. And I actually am going to arrange this song. I'm going to put it up on YouTube soon. But before I do, I thought we could talk about it, and then you can see what I'm doing, why I arrange it like this. So a song like this, usually what I'll do is it's very important that you start off with the lead sheet. You get something that's very close to the original song, all right? I don't recommend to start. You don't want to start off with something that's already arranged, unless you want to make an arrangement of an arrangement. I usually don't like to do that. I usually like to arrange the original song in my own way. But so you want to start off with something that's relatively close to the original, so that you know what's the original. If you're starting with something that's arranged, you might not know what's original or what's arranged already, so it makes it more difficult. So start off with something simple. I like it very plain and very simple, and then I'll add to it the things that I want to do to it so that it becomes my arrangement, not somebody else's arrangement. So a song like this, I will think about, what am I going to do? How am I going to arrange this song? Like, I want to tell a story with this arrangement. I want to take it from here to here. I want it to build. I want it to be, obviously this is a really emotional song. It's a very, dramatic song that everybody knows. So I don't want to ruin the original melody. The melody is so beautiful, and the original song is so beautiful that I don't want to ruin that. I don't want to like change it too much where you don't even recognize it. But I want to do something unique with it. I want to do something, it doesn't have to be completely unique. I don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. But I want to create something different, right? I want to do at some point, and it might not be right off the bat. I might start off the arrangement kind of simple, kind of like the original song, like just kind of playing a beautiful melody, and then take it somewhere, build it into something, right? You don't have to start the arrangement off crazy. I mean, sometimes you do. Sometimes I like to do that, but maybe this song, maybe that's not one of those songs that I want to start off with some crazy, African rhythm, and it could work, but maybe this case, no. All right, I'm gonna start slow, play it kind of straight, and build it. Maybe the second chorus, we're gonna add maybe a little bit of reharmonizations, not too crazy, but throw in a little unexpected chord here and there, throw in some spice, and then maybe go into a groove at some point. Maybe pick it up. It doesn't have to be a fast groove, but some kind of bluesy groove maybe, or maybe it could be an African groove for that matter at some point. But I want to tell a story. I want it to take you somewhere, build into it. So all right. So let's talk about the first chorus. Like I said, I want to play it relatively simple, but first let me play just the lead sheet exactly as written, not arranged, just plain. Okay, so we'll start with that. Okay, no arrangement there. I'm just playing it flat, like no emotion. Just okay. So we know what we're starting with. That's what the music says. All right, now let's turn it into something a little bit more cool. All right, so the first chorus, like I said, I don't want to get too crazy, but I want it to sound deep. I want it to sound emotional. I want it to sound beautiful. So I'm not going to change the chords dramatically, but I'm going to give it just a little bit, just enough so that it's cool. So it sounds nice. All right, so for the first chord, we got G, right? We're deciding what kind of voicing, okay? For those of you who don't know what a voicing is how do we lay out the notes? If we have a G, which is these three notes, G major chord, well, that's root position, right? But I'm not going to play it like this. All right, that's very elementary way of playing it, like this. What if I just move this one note up here? All of a sudden now, I went from here, very elementary, to much nicer sound that way, right? So just moving one note up an octave, changing it around. Now, I might want to add one more note, like for instance, maybe the 9. Oh, I like that. Now, I wouldn't want to add the major 7 to this. You know why? Because the root of the melody is the root. And if you add the major 7th, it's going to be way too dissonant, especially for this part of the song. Like, I don't want to start off with, like, what? No. Not for the first part of the song there. Now, if you notice that you got a major chord and the melody's a root, you got this, it creates this minor 9th interval, which is the most dissonant interval. Very dissonant, okay? So that's why a major 7 doesn't work so well. Most of the time, there could be exceptions, but most of the time, doesn't work so well. But the 9 is going to sound really nice. You get a little bit of depth. Without the 9, it's okay, it's plain, but I add the 9. All right, you can hear that note. That gives it just enough depth that maybe for the first chord, it's okay. That's enough. I don't need to throw in the whole kitchen sink on the first chord. Just enough. So you got G, add 9, right? Maybe I want to add this 5th here. Something like this, okay. Okay, now I'm moving here from G to C. Let me throw out some of my tools here so I can work on this. All right, so I'm moving here from G to C. Now the root movement, on the second measure, instead of just sticking with G, what if I move the root to B, so it's kind of moving up there, kind of leading up there, right? Now, I don't want to change the chord. I just want to change the root of the chord. So I'm still going to stick with a G, but since I'm moving to C, maybe I can make that G, so it's a B in the bass, but the chord's still G. Maybe I can make it a G7. If I do that, that G7 likes to go to C, right? Because it's the 5 of a C. So you call this, well, it's called a secondary dominant, where we turn a dominant, a 5 chord that, it's not the 5 of the key, this is the 1 of the key, becomes the 1/7 that leads you to the 4. All right? So I'm going to go with, let's see how that sounds. All right, I'm digging it. Nothing crazy yet, but we're working our way up. So we'll go G7 over B. Okay. And so. That leads really nicely. Now we got some movement happening. It sounds beautiful, but it still sounds like the original, right? I didn't change it that much. Now we go to C. Okay, cool. I want to add that 9 to this too, so another G add 9. You see my left hand? You might not be able to reach it, and if you can't, you can always roll it like this. You can do something like that. So, this is also a C add 9 here. All Okay, here we go. Okay, I'm going to go back to the G add 9 for this one, okay? Sometimes Finale does this, where you just go up to update layout, and it'll fix it. All right, this software, I see somebody asking me, what school software you use for arranging music? Yeah, this is Finale. I'm using Finale for a long time. I've used Sibelius. I actually own Sibelius because sometimes I work with people that use it. I'm not quite as good at it, but I'm really good at Finale. There's some quirks sometimes to it, like that. Like sometimes you put a chord in it and it'll not show up, and you have to hit that thing. But for the most part, I'm just used to it. If I go to Sibelius, I'm just a little slow, so I'm speedy with this one. Yeah, I've thought about that. Like, I really love notation. Maybe that can be a separate course at some time. If enough people are interested in it, we can talk about notating and how to score things out and make it look really good. But anyway, okay, let's get back to the point at hand. Advice for players with small hands. Yeah, I'll get to that in a little bit. But anyway, like I said before, I like to play nines. But you can roll those nines, or like something like this. You can roll those. Like just fine, like that. Okay, now we go to E minor, right? I want to make this a minor 7. You notice that the root and the melody relationship is a minor third here. So if I add this to make this a minor 7, it's not going to sound bad at all. But you see how I kind of decorate that melody instead of just going something like that. Now that gives it a little... Okay, so this one's going to become E minor 7 now, right? And then we get to the A7. Now, what's the relationship there between the melody and the root? I usually like to just make it within a octave. So instead of trying to think, it's what is that, a ninth or whatever? But no, it's a second, major second, right? Major second. So what kind of chord could I use there? A7, a simple A7, but maybe, you know what? I want some movement going on here. A voice that's gonna move with the melody there, maybe. So what if I did like this? Something that moves like that's kind of cool, right? Ooh, okay, let's do that. So I had the 13 here. It creates, nice tension. Flat 13 or sharp 5. 5, then, yeah, okay, let's do that like that. Oh, that's A13. And A7 sharp 5. And A7, yes. All right, so now we have this little voice moving. All right, I'll put that second voice in here. So if you want a little quick finale lesson here, select layer 2, and then I can just go like this, quarter note, Fa sharp, or F sharp. In Japanese, I'm always saying do, re, mi. I grew up with ABC, but being in Japan so long, sometimes do, re, mi just comes out naturally because that's all the kids learn music like that here. So I've trained myself to do that. Anyway. Yep. Yeah. You have that kind of motion happening. Now that's the music, the harmony's getting much more interesting now. Okay, now we look at these next two measures. Sitting on D7 for 2 measures. I'm going to be bored out of my mind to sit on a D7 for 2 measures. That's going to drive me crazy. Listen now. I can't take it. I have to do something else. Okay? At least for 1 measure. Now, what if I turn that D7 into a sus? Okay, in case you don't know what a sus is, if you have a major chord and you raise the third up a half step, you get a sus 4. Now you can do the same with a sus D7 sus 4. The third becomes a 4. All right, now it's gonna like suspend it. It's called a suspended. It's gonna create this sort of suspending sound, this floating sound where it doesn't really like sit there. It kind of delays the resolution of that chord. Okay. Okay. Then we're going to move on to the third line. Maybe I'll go back to that G7, kind of like before. Oh, I'm going to show you what I did there real quick. All right, so here we go back to the G, add 9, and okay, so here is what I got for the third line. Kind of like the first line, basically just use the same chords. You know what, though? You know what? Maybe it's time for, now the melody is a fifth, right? A perfect fifth. Maybe I could get away with a major 7 chord here instead of just a non-chord. And maybe this is the right time to throw in a major 7. Yes. Yes. Let's do that. All right. It's time for a little extra spice on the chord now. Oh, maybe here too. This sounds nice with a major 7. And then let's go back to major 7 here. All right. Okay. Now what I did here, so I'm going from G here to E. So what's a good way to go from G to E? I could go bum, or I could go as a root, right? I like that kind of root movement there. So I'm going to change this to an F. And if you look at the relationship, you have a major 6th. So I'm going to make this a 7 chord, something like this. It's actually an F13. Okay. All right. I realize that some of you don't understand maybe what these chord symbols mean, and that's okay. The idea is I'm just kind of showing you what I go through. I'm in the process. At another point, maybe in another course, we will talk about all these different chords. I would like to go do lots of different courses in the future, so it would take too much time to kind of explain everything about everything. So just kind of generally showing you what I would do with the arrangement here. So for instance, let's get to the end of this. Okay, so I didn't drastically change anything here. I really kind of stuck to the original. I just put in a little more color, a little more flavor. Okay. There's the last part. All right. Now let's listen to the whole part now. Now we don't have just a boring old lead sheet anymore. We have some cool chords. Not drastically reharmonized or anything. Just nice. All right, so that's the first time through, right? All right, now the second time through, I'm not going to do the whole thing, but Give you a quick little run through, right? The second time through, I might want to throw in, I'm not going to reharmonize the entire thing, but I might want to throw in a little bit of spice, okay? So if we look at the first part of the first line, the first time through, the root here is going dun, 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 dun. Okay, now I want to come up with a different root movement. So first thing that I do is instead of thinking about each chord, I'm just thinking about the way the melody and the root is moving. It's like two voices that are moving. All right, and if I can come up with a movement that I like with that, I can always fill in the harmony with a chord, right? So I don't like to think of the harmony first. I like to think about the melody and the root as almost like a two-part Bach invention, if you will. Two different voices moving, and then I can fill in the rest once I find a movement that I like. So for instance, we moved up the first time we went like that, right? What if I move down? What if I go down instead of up? So we go, start with G. What? Can I do that? I don't know. Let's see. All right. I kind of like it. Now, how can I make that harmony work? So we went F here, right? Then we go E. And the next one, E flat. Okay, so that's just the roots, okay? Those aren't the chords. So when you want to come up with the reharmonization, I recommend to do it like this, is just come up with roots that you like. And you can make any root work with any single melody note, no matter what the intervallic relationship is. Doesn't mean it's always, when I say it can work, any single chord could work. It doesn't mean that every chord progression is going to sound good or that you're going to be happy with it. But the possibilities are endless is what I'm getting at. And any one particular root can work with any one particular melody note. So for instance, even a very strange minor ninth, if I used a 7 flat 9 chord, I can still make that sound work. Or maybe I can use some kind of slash chord, like kind of a minor 7 flat 5 over F or something dark or something. So that's the most dissonant interval, but even that, I still have options that I can create harmony to make that work. So the idea that any one bass can work with any one melody note, you can come up with stuff. All right, so the idea, though, is that you know what that relationship is. So here, I'm going to stick with the first chord that we did, the G add 9 for the first one. All right, then I move to F, right? Oh. Now, what is the interval relationship? The key to coming up with the harmony is to know that the root is a augmented fourth, diminished fifth, take your pick, tritone for that matter, but it's that interval, right? It's not a perfect fourth, an augmented fourth. So certain chords would work with that and certain chords wouldn't work with that. For instance, a major 7 chord. Oh, this sounds dissonant, but it's a sharp 11, a major 7 sharp 11, so it could work. What about a dominant 7? Well, a dominant 7 would be a 7 sharp 11. That would work. Major 7? How about dominant 7? Oh, yeah, that works. That works okay. How about a minor 7? No. It kind of clashes a little too much with that fifth, right? But a minor 7 flat 5, yes, would work. Would it work in this situation? Well, probably not, but we'll try. No. All right, now it works theoretically, but put it to practice and it sounds like crap. So I wouldn't use that one. Diminished 7. Technically, yes, it would work, but it sounds like crap, so I wouldn't use it in this case. All right, so I went through all the 5 basic chords. Major 7, 7, minor 7 flat 5, diminished 7. I would say major 7 or dominant 7 sounds really cool. We'll go with a 7, so that would be an F7 basically, right? All right, here we go. Now, What is the interval relationship that we have between this and this? That's a minor third. Okay, so if I have a minor third, I can use a major 7? No, I cannot. If I have a dominant 7, yes, I could. I could make that a 7 flat 9. So we could get... Now, do I want to use that much tension here? Or maybe not. Maybe it's a little too much. I could use it, but maybe that's too much. That's not what I was going for right here for this particular song. Maybe in another song, yes. In this one, maybe not. But minor 7, of course, minor 7 will work. A minor third, of course. So, yeah, okay. Sounds pretty straightforward. Minor 7 flat 5. Yeah, I could use it, but that's not what I want. It's not what I'm going for. All right, so I'm going to go with the minor 7 here. All right, okay, so now the next chord, E flat. I see an E flat, I see a D. That's a major 7th interval, right? So could I use a major 7? Absolutely, it's a major 7 interval. Of course I could use a major 7. Could I use a dominant 7? No. That's not going to work. Minor 7? No. Minor 7 flat 5? No. Diminished 7? Technically, yes, but it's going to be a little bit too much dissonance for here. So I think a major 7 is going to sound very nice right here. Let's see what you think. Up until there, it's not that drastically different. But when I hit that E flat, it's all of a sudden there's a new shade, a new color that's come to life that hasn't been in the song yet. Like something, it's like you've been seeing like blue and green, and all of a sudden a bright purple pops out, and just out of the blue, right? So it's like kind of shocking. It's like, oh, well, that's new sound. So here's what that sounds like. Ooh, yeah, I like that. E flat major 7. Okay. All right, so I might continue on with that. All right. Running a little bit short on time here, but I kind of get you started on this is how I come up with the harmony. Basically, I'm just going through what I do when I decide what harmony to use. And again, like I kind of pick my places. I don't like to throw in a reharm everything. I like to pick places where I want to shade the colors in a different way, or like there's a particular part of the song I want to throw in a different color that we haven't seen yet. All right, so if I'm going to arrange the whole song, first time I'm going to play it kind of normal, second time a little bit of reharm, and then maybe by the third time I'm going to pick up something different. Maybe I'm going to do it in a groovier, some kind of different rhythm, like... That's kind of like a bluesy 4, but I could do it also in like a 9/8 kind of thing. I could do it in like I said before, an African. What that would sound like. How about like this? All right, it's kind of cool. Maybe it's a little too upbeat maybe for this song, but hey, maybe it'll work. Maybe I can make it work like that. But that's what I do. I'll always just try out a bunch of different rhythms until I find one that I think, I like that one. I like that groove. I might change the time signature. Like this was in 4/4 right now. The original song's in 3/4. I do that a lot. Change the time signature, and you have like a whole different thing, whole different rhythm and stuff. So anyway, I'm going to play just a little bit of this, and while I'm playing it, I'm going to do some questions at the end. I love that groovy one. Okay, I will play it with that groovy one, and then I'll try to answer as many questions as I can after this. So over the next couple minutes while I'm playing it, go ahead and shoot me some questions, and I will try to answer those at the end. If we go over, we're already a little bit over. I don't mind. I will do my best to answer all you guys' questions. So here we go. Here is my Amazing Grace, my amazing arrangement of Amazing Grace. All right, let's try. All right. Thanks, guys. Just messing around there. I'm gonna come up. I'm gonna put this one up somewhat soon on YouTube, though. I'm gonna kind of use some of these ideas that we talked about today. That I actually, am arranging it on the spot here with you. But I'll use some of these ideas. Let me try to answer some questions. Thank you guys so much for sticking around. I know it's late. Kind of feel like I was playing at church there for a second. It's been a long time since I played at church. I used to play all the time at church back in Arizona. Haven't played one time since I've been to Japan. They don't have a lot of churches out here. But anyway, all right, let's check out some questions here. I love the groovy one. Could you talk more about arranging with that kind of groove? Well, yeah, this last groove is basically like a 9/8. It's a slow kind of it's this like 3/4, but each beat is going to be triplet feel. So 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2, kind of like a 9/8, if you will. There's a 12/8 groove too, which is kind of similar, but this is in 3/4, so it turns into like a 9/8. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 boom. So your bass line and everything is kind of falling within those 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. You get this. All right. It's not exactly swing, but it's kind of similar to swing because it's like a really, really, really slow swing. Yeah. So it's kind of similar in that sense. This is more of a general question, but to master a really difficult piece of music, do you have any memorization or best techniques to approach if you could share? Well, I have to say that by learning jazz and by learning chords, that I become better at memorizing things. And I think that the more that you can break down the music and understand it from a theoretical perspective, especially the harmony and stuff, like what chords are happening and kind of break things down, I think that's a lot easier way to remember songs. So, well, also by using your ears as well, but basically like remembering the melody and the chords and the chord progression, as opposed to just trying to memorize every note. Of course, you need to memorize the notes if you're playing like a Mozart concerto or something. You can't just like improvise the note. I mean, you could, but people might get upset with you. But you should be able to kind of know what the chord progression is. And as you start to understand progressions and stuff, hopefully that will help you memorize the piece as well. It did with me for that matter. Greg, it's been awesome. Thanks love the explanation and teaching style. I have a music degree, but with 3 kids, I'm getting rusty. Thank you. Oh, thanks, Greg. I'm glad you had a good time. And Keg Narok, thank you so much. I'm so glad I joined. I learned so much. Awesome. Will you post a PDF with your new arrangement of Amazing Grace? Yes, I will. I will post a PDF for the new Amazing Grace. Thank you. Thanks, Pam. So glad you joined. I feel like I struggle to play accurately without looking at the keys while I play, which makes sight reading frustrating. Any tips? Thanks, Astronix. I think that's how you say it. Okay. You have a hard time sight reading without looking at the keys, right? Well, it's something that I've had to teach a lot of kids to do. Some things that I do is like, or even tell the parent to do this, is take a piece of paper and like something that'll cover their hands so they actually can't see their hands. I think if you're not used to it, not looking, then it's going to be super frustrating, but you're just going to have to kind of force yourself to not look at your hands, or maybe, if you're sight reading, you'll have to open your eyes, but do something where you're forcing yourself not to look at your hands. It's going to have to bite the bullet. It's going to be hard at first, but it's kind of like a habit that you've got yourself into. The only way to do it is to just force yourself not to look at your hands and figure out a way to do that. If you're just doing with your right hand, cover something with your left hand so you can't see, and just train yourself, because you can figure out by feeling the piano, the keys, right? Like I don't have to look at the keys. If I'm making a huge jump, then sometimes it's nice to look, but if I'm not moving like really far, I don't need to look. I can just feel around the keys. Okay. Amazing Grace sounds intricately beautiful. Thank you very much. And I noticed that my fingers are not as fast as I'd liked. I'm limited by my technique here. I'm practicing Hannon and Bach inventions. Anything else you recommend? You know what? It's a little bit crazy, but I recommend that you improvise and do the things that we did earlier, where you're practicing playing continuous eighth notes, playing continuous quarter notes or whatever, and the things that we practice today, I think, can be really, really good technical exercises as well. Like I became a lot faster when I started to improvise. Actually, I had a certain amount of technique before I started improvising, but improvising made me a much better musician and actually really improved my technique as well. So I know people don't say that very often, but being able to improvise, like spending a lot of time improvising and playing fast I don't know if that's the right thing to say, but doing the techniques and stuff that I showed you, and I think it'll really help your overall technique as well. Harmony's great. Thank you. Wonderful class. A lot of things need to be digested. Yeah, please go ahead and watch the class again. Perhaps in the future you could talk about how to turn harmony into left-hand patterns. There are a lot of videos on YouTube about reharm, but not many about texture groove. Cool. Yeah, it's a good suggestion. Thank you. Zhang, I'm sorry if I'm not saying it right. Kevin, where can we buy your CDs in the UK? I don't think there's any distribution. The only way is to get it from my site, but right now we're not shipping internationally because we've had some stuff get sent back lately with the coronavirus. It's been a mess. So shipping. So right now you have to just do it online. Like streaming, Spotify or iTunes. You can get it on iTunes and stuff. Could you talk about choosing voicings in the context of reharm, but also just comping with a group? Talk about choosing voicings. Yes, I will. It's something that can't be answered short in a quick answer. But basically, okay, just a quick rundown on voicing is, if you have a chord, let's say a C major 7 chord, you got a melody, you always want to think of the relationship, like you talked about before, relationship between melody and root. So you have, the melody is a G, the chord's a C major 7, and then you got to decide where to put the root. Now, typically you want to be between around 2 octaves. You don't want to be more than 3, and you don't want to be less than 1, somewhere in the 2 octave range. So first thing you got to decide is where you put the root. And if I put it here, then I'm going to fill in all those notes in between, and I'm going to try not to double. Okay, you can double sometimes, but don't do it without knowing that you're doing it, basically, and then figure out where I'm going to put those extra tones. Or if I put the root here, then I got to make a more of a spacious, open voicing sound. All right, so going through that process of melody, deciding where to put the root, and then figuring out where to put the other notes in the harmony, the 3rd, the 7th, and so on. Anyway, this is a course that I'd like to get into in more depth. I love talking about harmony. It's something I've studied a lot. But it's also not something that can be answered in such a short thing. It would take a lot of time to really get deep. What mic are you using for piano? I'm using a AKG 451B stereo pair. That's what I'm using. Yes, so masterful. Thank you. Amazing class. Thank you very much. When improvising on the blues with mixed learning scales, a comp with a walking bass line, or incorporate something else like a Charleston rhythm. When improvising on the blues, would you comp with the walking bass? Yeah, you could do all kinds of. You could do the same thing I did. I mean, you can do a bass line. In the 3rd course, 2 weeks from now, we're going to talk about walking bass lines. So I'm going to get into really in depth and show you some cool ways that you can come up with cool bass lines. But yeah, you could do that, or you could do some kind of stride things. I don't know. There's a endless amount of left-hand accompaniments that you could do with it. Comp pattern. Use the comp pattern you are using with a trio combo. This one, you could do it, but no, I would probably end up doing more something where I'm playing the voicings in the middle register, if I'm playing with a bassist, really, so that he can kind of get down here. You could technically get away with this, but it's probably going to drive the bassist crazy because he's going to be stuck playing F, 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 and he's going to get really bored. Am I wrong to be addicted to 6/9 chords and tritone subs? No, those are cool. 6/9 chords, tritone subs, good stuff. It's a good thing to be addicted to. I've been learning your merry-go-round of life arrangement. If you had some tips for how to practice the first two-handed run or two-handed runs in general. First two-handed run. Oh yeah. This is like this harmonic minor scale, right? Well, just gotta make sure that you're doing the correct fingering, right? I think that's it. So just make sure that you're doing it slowly with the correct fingering. This fingering that I'm showing you with the left hand. I had to work on that quite a bit, actually, to get it really smooth and fast and not stumble on myself. How to get groovy technique in picking the notes. I feel it felt really hard to pick good notes even using the blues scale. How to get used to the groovy technique in picking the notes. I felt really hard to pick. Well, okay. That's a good question, Mike. So basically, in the beginning, if you're starting to improvise, if you're not that experienced yet, any of those notes in the blues scale, the actual one particular note, none of those notes are going to sound bad. They're all going to sound pretty good. So it's just a matter of building up vocabulary, like memorizing some of the licks that I showed you and learning new ideas, listening to new phrases, and kind of slowly, gradually starting to get new ideas. So if you play, let's say, for instance, you're getting started and you play like 100 phrases, and one of those phrases was like really awesome. The other 99 were like kind of not so great, so. That's okay. If you can get 1 out of 100 to be really good at first, that's a good start. And then maybe you can get up to 2 out of 100, 3 out of 100. I don't know if you'll ever get to 100 out of 100. All right, I don't even get that high. So the matter is just occasionally getting something that sounds really awesome, but to just keep plugging through it, even if it's not great. Just keep playing through it, and you'll start to discover a little bit at a time what sounds cool and what doesn't sound cool. Thanks, AJ. Beginner jazz ideas to practice. Thank you for this. Cool. Zhang, do you write down the full arrangement? Find it impossible to read the lead sheet and play more complex patterns, textures out of the lead sheet. Yeah, I would recommend that. I do write out sometimes, especially if I'm going to sell the arrangement. For myself, not always, but I recommend if you're not really good at reading lead sheets to write it all out. In fact, even if you are, to get good at voicing and harmony, write things out. Even improvising, write out your solos, and I learned a lot by writing things out. I was listening with my 11-year-old daughter. Any advice for a small hand player? Okay, so you can anything that you can't reach, like for instance like a tenth or whatever, is to roll it. Do like this, or just abbreviate it. All right, so you got instead of this, you could do like this. You can do an octave or something. But you could also, I like to roll things if I can't reach it. There's certain things that I can't play, like Liszt can do crazy things, and you have to just kind of roll it and make do with it. But there's so many things that you can do, right? So don't let that hold you back. Just because you can't do certain things, there's so many things that you could do, and so many unlimited possibilities that you could do with really small hands or big hands, right? So don't let it hold you back. Don't let it be like, oh, I can't play the piano because I don't have big hands. But there's only like a small, minute fraction of what you can do with the piano, those like big things, right? There's so many cool things you could do without having to do that. So don't worry about it. I've been motivating myself to play using the jazz piano book. Thanks, J-La. And do you have any advice? Fingerings, nah. Yeah, so you just... advice on fingering. Some of the stuff I wrote the fingering in there, but basically you're just going to have to kind of experiment with your hands, what works. And I mean, as a general rule, if you can avoid putting your thumb on the black keys, like that's kind of a very generic rule of things. Sometimes you need to, but if you can avoid that, that's great. And then find the way that you can keep yourself in one position for as long as possible. So you're not switching position more than you need to. So trying to stick to the positions like that. Thanks, Pam. McCubed. Thank you. Let's talk about scales to use over chord progressions. I'm not exactly sure which chord progressions you're talking about. It would depend on the chord progressions. Next week, we're going to talk about a song that's kind of based off Take the A Train, and I will talk about what scales to use over that you could apply to other songs as well, and like kind of get more into like how to use scales. So this first lesson is really the easiest one. We're going to kind of gradually get just not crazy hard or anything, but kind of expand a little bit next week. So hopefully that will answer your question for next week's lesson, okay? We'll get into more scales, and scale choices and stuff like that. All right, thanks, Jay Riggs. Thanks, Juan. One pianist, I would choose Keith Jarrett, and he's one that kind of got me into playing piano, watching his videos and stuff. So, yeah, Keith Jarrett. Thank you, Uchida-san. Thank you, Masako. Any technique to memorize chords? Here, I'm going to write the name of this book I recommend until I write my own book. I'm going to write my own book about how to do this. make it a little more fun. This one's like kind of dry, but it's a book that I used about how to practice harmony. I'm going to write it here right now so you guys can check it out. It's one of this. I didn't use that many books, but I use this book a lot. And it's just, again, it's about how to practice harmony more than anything else. And I use the concepts of this, A Creative Approach to Jazz Harmony by Bill Dobbins. All right. Thank you. Thanks, Brian. Arranging songs with dual melodies. Not exactly sure what you mean by dual melodies, but yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that, but I appreciate the question. I wish I understand dual melodies. I mean, like two different melodies. Anyway, sorry, I can't answer that one. I'm not quite sure I get it. This class was so much fun. Thank you. Thanks, Alias. Thanks, Andrew. Separating. Yeah, I'm thinking about doing that. I'm thinking this is kind of like a test run for me, this first course, right? I tried to make it as general that many people could participate in it. But I'm really thinking about making more of an online presence with teaching. I think I would need to separate into beginner and intermediate and advanced. I've thought about that a lot, so I appreciate the advice. And please do shoot me an email. Let me know what you thought. Let me know what you want me to do. I'm really open to some advice, like how you thought about the class, like what kind of things you want to learn in the future. So I'm really open to some ideas, some suggestions, some criticism. It's all good. So, Michael, thank you. It's got so much fun. Thank you. What's the best way to learn scales theory so I can know which notes to highlight during improv? Well, the best way to do it is to learn a lot of notes. And next class, we're going to talk more about how to choose the scales, how to approach choosing scales, what kind of scales you can use, and stuff like that. How do you recommend we prepare for next week's class? Well, if you could just practice the song. Learn the song well, and if you want to mess around with the improv stuff, that's great, but you don't have to. The idea is that this is like the first lesson. My idea is that you're going to take this and then now go practice it and get really good at it. This is like so even if you don't practice it a lot for next week, that's okay. If you do, great. But just basically learn the melody. And then next week we'll get into it, and then hopefully that will inspire you to go and really practice it and get really good at it. So that's kind of my general idea for these classes. All right, thanks guys. It's getting a little bit late here. I went quite a bit overtime. Thanks for sticking with me. It's 1:30 in the morning here. I'm trying not to show it, but I think I'm fading a little bit here. So giving it my all. Well, I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much, Royce and Jayla. And I'll see you all next week. Okay. You guys have a great one. All right. See you guys. Bye-bye.